Well, hi, this is Dr. Pete. Are you ready for part 2 of our series on the row? And I'd like you to come away with at least a couple of exercises that you feel comfortable or that you think you would feel comfortable performing on a regular, consistent basis. That's how it'll help you. So stay tuned. Thanks. Well, hi, this is Dr. Peter Morano, and I hope you are ready for part 2 of our traversal through the rowing exercise universe. And we spent time talking about the bent over barbell row last video, and it's unquestionably an effective exercise, but effectiveness is only part of the story, because as we age, we must also consider the demands an exercise places on the body, and we started talking about the orthopedic cost, if you recall. And I'd also mention that a healthy 25-year-old and a healthy 75-year-old may both benefit from rowing exercises, but they often differ in their tolerance for prolonged spinal loading, also for balance challenges, joint stress, and recovery demands. And the question is not whether the barbell row works. It clearly does. The question, however, is whether it represents the best balance between benefit and cost for a particular individual of a particular fitness level and age. So in today's presentation, I wish to begin a discussion of additional exercises that are alternatives to the bent over row. And as we continue through the presentation, you'll notice a recurring theme once again. The goal is not to avoid challenge. The goal is to maximize adaptation while minimizing unnecessary orthopedic cost. There it is again. So to start off today's presentation, I have picked the single-arm dumbbell row, which is another one of those underrated exercises in strength training. And at first glance, it appears to be a simple unilateral version of a row, but in reality, it introduces an entirely new challenge: resisting rotation. One arm is going to be pulling the weight upward, and the trunk then must work to prevent twisting. The obliques, the deep abdominal muscles, and other stabilizers become heavily involved. This transforms the exercise into a blend of pulling strength and core training, exactly what we need, because many real-world activities occur one side at a time. And so the single-armed row often transfers exceptionally well to daily life. And the single-arm row may actually be what we would consider a functional exercise champ. Just consider the activities you perform throughout a typical day. I've got a list here. How about lifting a suitcase into a car trunk, a big heavy suitcase? How about taking out the trash, carrying your toolbox, carrying a 24-count case of bottled water, lifting it into the shopping cart and then into your car, carrying a bag of cat litter, carrying firewood, carrying a cooler, holding a heavy door open while carrying items in the other hand, carrying a bucket, pushing or pulling a vacuum cleaner, carrying books or stacks of papers. I can relate to that one. Holding a child by one hand, carrying groceries while walking across uneven ground. That's a lot of fun. Navigating stairs while carrying an object. I hope you're holding on to the rail. Helping another person to stand up or walk, and supporting a spouse or a friend who loses balance. Well, the key point here is that very few real-life tasks involve perfectly balanced loads held with both hands, right? Instead, most daily activities challenge the body asymmetrically, requiring the muscles of the trunk, the hips, the shoulders, and core to stabilize the body while one side is loaded more heavier than the other. So exercises such as the suitcase carry that we've covered in a different video prepare us for these real-world demands by improving strength, balance, posture, and the ability to safely handle uneven loads throughout the day. And most of these activities, as we said, are one-sided, and the single-arm row then reflects that exact reality. and it teaches the body to generate force on one side while maintaining stability through the trunk and pelvis. And another major advantage of this exercise is that asymmetries become impossible to hide, and a stronger side can no longer compensate for a weaker side, is what that means. And this allows weakness to be identified and corrected before weaknesses contribute to injury or dysfunction. And if I had to choose a single rowing exercise based only on its contribution to lifelong functionality, the single arm row would be a very strong contender for the top position. This next exercise will require the use of a bench, and we'll explain why. One of the challenges of many rowing exercises is that the lower back must remain active throughout the set, and while this can be beneficial, it can also become limiting in some individuals. And the chest-supported dumbbell row solves this problem by supporting the torso against an inclined bench. So you don't use a flat bench, you want to have your bench inclined. So you can lean your torso against it. And with the chest thus supported, the lower back is relieved of much of its stabilizing responsibility. And this also allows the exerciser to focus almost entirely on the muscles of the upper back, and you will feel that as you perform this specific exercise. For individuals with chronic low back discomfort, spinal stenosis, previous surgeries, or reduced tolerance for prolonged hip hinging, this exercise can be remarkably effective. Many experienced coaches, in fact, consider the chest-supported row as one of the safest and most efficient ways to train the upper back. Let's talk next about the Smith machine variation of the bent-over row. And although the Smith machine is a familiar sight in many gyms, it may not be fully understood how it would differ in this exercise from a free weight barbell. A Smith machine consists of a barbell that is attached to steel guide rails, allowing the bar to move only in a fixed vertical or slightly angled path. Unlike a traditional barbell, which requires the lifter to control the weight in all directions, the Smith machine provides built-in stability and safety catches that can be engaged at various heights. This makes it very friendly for older lifters. Actually, the Smith machine can be viewed as a bridge between machine-based and free weight training. It retains the compound multi-joint nature of a barbell exercise, which is great, while providing additional stability, safety, and confidence, features that many older adults find particularly appealing. And the Smith machine row occupies an interesting middle ground between free weights and machine-based training. The exerciser will still perform a standing hip hinge and will be rowing a loaded bar. However, the machine guides the bar along a predetermined path, reducing the demands associated with balance and bar control. And that is why some strength purists criticize the Smith machine, because it does remove certain stabilization requirements. However, for older adults, this reduction in complexity can actually be quite advantageous, and the Smith row preserves many of the benefits of the bent-over row, freestyle, while eliminating some of the factors most likely to limit performance. For all of these reasons, I often view the Smith row as a highly practical compromise, retaining the benefits of hip hinging and whole body tension while lowering the orthopedic costs associated with traditional free weight rowing. When performing a Smith machine bent-over row, the fixed bar path can help maintain consistency from repetition to repetition, while still effectively training the lats, rhomboids, middle trapezius, posterior deltoids, and arm muscles. However, because the machine controls the movement path, as we've said, the exercise generally involves fewer stabilizing muscles than a traditional free weight bent-over row. But for many older adults, the trade-off may be worthwhile, allowing them to gain many of the strength-building benefits of rowing, while reducing some of the balance and coordination challenges associated with free weight use. And because the bar follows a predetermined path, the Smith machine reduces the balance and stabilization demands placed on the body. This can make certain exercises easier to learn and may allow some individuals, particularly older adults or those with orthopedic concerns, to focus more on the target muscles and less on balancing the load. It also provides a greater sense of security because the bar can be quickly locked into place if fatigue occurs. I'd like to say a few more things about the Smith machine. And if you look at the Smith machine on the left here, you notice it's built to have a slight backward angle to the bar path, and this can offer several advantages over a perfectly vertical Smith machine when performing the bent over row. First, the angled path may more closely match the natural arc that many lifters use when rowing, allowing the bar to travel slightly toward the hips rather than strictly up and down. And this can create a more comfortable pulling motion and may also allow better engagement of the lat muscles. And second, depending on the direction of the angle and how the lifter is positioned, the angled Smith machine that you see can reduce the tendency for the bar to contact the knees or thighs during the movement, and that would be discouraged, of course. This often allows the lifter to maintain a more natural hip-hinged position without having to alter body mechanics to accommodate the bar path. Third, some lifters find that an angled Smith machine places less stress on the wrists, elbows, and shoulders because the movement pattern feels more anatomically natural. And since the body is not perfectly vertical during a bent-over row, a slightly angled bar path may better align with the direction in which the arms naturally pull. So for older adults, perhaps the greatest benefit is comfort. A row that feels more natural is often easier to perform consistently and with better technique. That said, the difference is usually modest rather than dramatic. Both vertical and angled Smith machines can be highly effective for bent-over rowing, and the best choice is often the machine that allows the lifter, you and me, to maintain a stable hip hinge, keep the spine neutral, and row through a comfortable range of motion without any joint discomfort. And in practical terms, many older adults find that a slightly angled Smith machine feels just a little more forgiving and a little less restrictive than a perfectly vertical model in this exercise, and particularly when rowing toward the lower abdomen or upper waist, which is often the preferred pulling path for maximizing lat involvement. Now, to be clear, a traditional vertical Smith machine is a fine piece of exercise equipment and provides an extremely predictable and consistent bar path. For many older adults, this can be a significant advantage because it reduces the balance and stabilization demands of the exercise, allowing greater focus on proper rowing technique and muscular effort. The fixed vertical track also makes it easier to monitor progress because each repetition follows the same path, helping to improve exercise consistency. And for the bent-over row, the vertical Smith machine often encourages excellent posture and control. Because the bar path is fixed, many lifters find it easier to maintain a stable hip hinge and avoid excessive body English or momentum or wiggling. And this can help keep the emphasis on the muscles of the back rather than turning the exercise into a whole body movement. Another advantage is familiarity. The vertical Smith machines are widely available in commercial gyms, and many trainees have years of experience using them. As a result, there is often less learning curve and less need to experiment with body position compared to the angled Smith machine. And from a safety standpoint, the vertical Smith machine also provides the same quick lock mechanism and built-in security that make all Smith machines and training with them attractive for many older adults. If fatigue happens to occur or technique happens to break down during the workout, the bar can be racked almost instantaneously. So I would have to say, in practical terms, both the vertical and the slightly angled Smith machines can be excellent tools for the bent over row. The angled version may feel a bit more natural for some lifters, particularly when pulling toward the lower abdomen, while the vertical version offers exceptional consistency, stability, and ease of use. The most important factor is not really the angle of the rails, but whether the lifter can maintain a strong hip hinge, a neutral spine, and a comfortable rowing motion that effectively trains the back muscles without discomfort. Now I've got one more variation of the row for this video, and it happens to be a new piece of equipment called the MIKOLO row machine. And for older adults, the MIKOLO row machine may be an excellent middle ground option. It is safer and easier than a barbell bent over row, and more stable than a single arm dumbbell row, and less spine demanding than a Smith machine row. And it's also more posturally involved than a true chest supported dumbbell row. So it's got a lot going for it, and it's in the market now. It seems like it just came out, and it's priced at around $350. And I would say that the MIKOLO row machine is a very good option for building the pulling muscles of the back, while free weight rows are better for building the total body control needed to use that strength in real life. And for many older adults, the best program would not choose one or the other. It would be to use the MIKOLO machine to safely build back strength, and then use carefully selected dumbbell, Smith machine, or barbell row variations to preserve your capability in terms of your coordination, your posture, and functionality. So just a few more words here about this particular exercise equipment. It's best understood, as the title says, as a seated, plate-loaded lever row. And the lifter, as you can see, sits on the seat, braces the feet, holds the handles, and rows the lever arms back toward the torso. And the torso is mostly upright and unsupported, so that the lower back is not removed from the exercise entirely, but it also is not challenged nearly as much as it is during a true barbell bent over row. And with this machine, the row is easier to control and much less demanding on the lower back. And this MIKOLO machine is giving up some of what we consider as a whole body challenge, but in exchange, it does allow many older adults to train the upper back with more confidence and less spinal demand. And I think that's a worthwhile compromise in many cases. Well, we've made it to the finish line again. And in closing, I would say that every exercise should be viewed as an investment in your health, your longevity, and your functionality. When you invest money, you want the greatest possible return while minimizing unnecessary risk, right? Well, exercise is no different. The return that we think about includes strength, muscle mass, power, balance, posture, confidence, and capability. And the cost includes fatigue, recovery demands, joint stress, downtime, tendon irritation, and accumulated wear and tear on the orthopedic system. Each one of these rowing exercises that has been presented has points in their favor, even if they vary overall in terms of what they provide versus what they don't. So, in Part 3, the final part of the series on the rowing exercises, I will make specific Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 recommendations for all of the exercise variations that have been discussed. So, I hope you will join me for that. Well, that's it. Part 2, in the can, as they say, which leaves Part 3. So please look for that. And until then, this is Dr. Pete wishing you all the best. Bye-bye.